Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here. You guys know what time it is. Time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. For those of you who like these type of videos, please remember to click like down below. If you're not subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button. And Jeff Cavalier, aka Athlean-X, has made a video on a topic very near and dear to my heart. And it is a topic I feel qualified to talk about, and that has to do with box squats and quads. Now, people would say, Jason, how dare you? How dare you discuss a topic behind our God, the almighty Jeff Cavalier? And I would say to those fans, look guys, I'm not disagreeing with him about the box squats. I'm actually really happy that he made a video on box squats. Why? Because I do box squats every week. I have all of my clients do box squats every week. And I mean, my client counts in the double digits. My paying clients all do box squats. I'm kind of a fan of this exercise. So the fact that he talked about it's a big deal. And I have pretty big quads. You guys see from my training clips, you can see from the thumbnail, I actually have pretty decent quads. They're not the most amazing in the world, but they're bigger than Jesse's. So, pretty big quads, and I have over a 500-pound low box squat. Okay? All confirmable on camera. I do it all the time. I max out on various box squats several times a week, several times a month, not per week. I do box squatting. And I kind of want to offer some interesting insights because he did talk about something that he's technically biomechanically correct, but I want to kind of spin it in a different direction. And I do supplemental quad work. I do want to make this clear. You're not going to maximize your quad development off of the box squat unless you're a novice lifter. Now, if you're at Jesse's stance, you can. But Jeff kind of came in and he said, you know, yeah, we know that a lot of power lifters and other people, they want to do the really wide stance squats. And that is how you should box squat. You should go wide stance. He makes an interesting point about the de-emphasis of the quad. But the point I want to make, I am an athlete. I coach athletes. Jeff talks about training like an athlete. This is kind of a point to where when you start taking back to a narrow stance box squat, you're saying, I don't want to train like an athlete anymore for the sake of hopefully getting more quad. And I'm going to address that later in a minute. But the point is that Jeff promotes training like an athlete, right? That's his catchphrase. And I think that's a good thing. I think he should promote that. Like Jeff saying, well, you should train like an athlete. Absolutely, brother. I'm on board. I'm on board with you right there. We should be training like athletes. Well, let's come over to the point. The wider stance box squat carries over better for athletes. And I mean all athletes. There's a reason the guys who run even the conjugate templates like I do, who coach athletes in a variety of contact sports, field sports, they all have them do the wide stance, just like you do for powerlifting. Why? It makes you better at unilateral strength. You're less likely to develop strength imbalance. It's just harder to have compensatory strength, and it teaches you to get outside of that one plane. Jeff talks about training through the multiple planes. Well, those feet out wide, those toes out. It trains you to push into those other planes. It teaches you to be better at being able to apply big amounts of power when you have to pivot. Because a lot of people who need to pivot and turn out on a field, and they need to get onto that one leg and push out. When you're doing really heavy weight on box squats, it helps you develop strength at those angles, right? Because you can develop all the speed and mobility and agility in the world doing other stuff, but when you need to really apply force hard when you're put into some of those outward angles, box squatting is going to really, really help you there if you get really strong at it. And we know that the box squat is one of the premier force generating and speed generating exercises. We know out of every squat, based upon the research, that it has the highest rate of force production. So if you want to train people to be more explosive and more powerful, box squatting is pretty high on the list of priorities. It works for that. That's tested in labs, and plenty of athletes do it. But that wider stance helps with that. And it helps you to also develop a better posterior chain, better adductors, better abductors. Teaches you how to get your hamstrings more involved into squatting motions. And really, you need that. You need athletes to have a lot of power in their hips. You need them to be able to drive through things with their hamstrings and glutes, right? You need athletes to be able to do that. So it is training like an athlete to get that wider stance. So let's come over to the other point. He talks about, but because when you do take that stance, it can take some of the stress off the quads. And he's right. I'm actually going to agree. But I find for me personally, my quads are actually my weak link in my squat. There's a reason I barely box squat off of a 12-inch box over 500 instead of closer to 6. I need bigger, stronger quads. So I do supplemental quad work to help with that. They're still my weak link on my box squat. And I have pretty big quads. I need more quad. So I do supplemental work for that. But the point we come over to when you look at what's going on with the box squat, when you think about it in terms of overall strength development, when we look at bigger, different lifts, a lot of times there's a different way to look at something. A lot of bodybuilders, and that he's taken the bodybuilder direction instead of thinking again back like a strength coach. And I think Jeff, when he looks at what I'm saying, he may actually agree. He just hadn't put that sort of thought into it, because most strength coaches will still have you do these wide who do box squats. They don't have you go in narrow. We know on the wider stance, once you develop the other muscles, because it lets you bring more muscles into the equation, and it changes the center of gravity and gives you better leverages, you can usually lift more weight. Okay? Because we're incorporating more posterior chain, more abductor, more adductor, because we're incorporating more of these muscles with a better bar path, and we're able to get them to get us exploding harder, we can usually do more weight. Well, what do we know on things like chin-ups and pull-ups? We take something as simple as those, and we know that the pull-up and the chin-up, whichever one you can do more weight on, tends to make everything else grow, right? If you can do more weight on those and compare that to, say, a curl, because you're able to do more weight and put other muscles into it, your biceps don't work less on a curl because you bring more back and everything into it. They work more, right? They work more. You're able to do a heavier movement. Now, it's not as pronounced with something like a squat by bringing the other muscles in, but generally speaking, when you incorporate other muscles into a movement pattern that let you lift more weight, and then you get stronger and lift more weight, that can still carry over to the other muscles. So the argument would be that yes, maybe the quads get slightly de-emphasized in order to bring some of these other muscles into play more. But the point I'm going to make, if it allows you to be stronger and lift more weight while still using the quad as a primary mover, you're not necessarily losing quad stimulation. And here's what you can do to make that back up. We come back and look at it, and he raised this point, and it was a great point. Phenomenal point. When you squat deeper, right? When you get below parallel, what happens? You get more quad activation, right? The lower quad, it requires you to go below parallel to fully activate. That's where the real magic happens there. Box squats, when done correctly, you can usually squat real deep. So when you learn to get out wide and you start squatting to a low box, I think what a lot of guys are going to find when you get over and mess with a lower box and you get really strong at it and you build all that support musculature and you build your hips up and you build your glutes up and everything to allow you to really box squat from a deeper position out of the bottom, you're going to find that you still hit those quads super hard. When I hit a heavy box squat, when I hit a max box squat, even with that wide stance, because it's fairly deep, it's 2 or 3 inches below parallel, I feel my quads. I absolutely feel my quads as a primary mover when I go heavy. Same thing when I do my speed work on them, right? When you start doing speed work on the low boxes, even with the wider stance, you get a tremendous pump and burn in your quads. It does happen. The quads are still used. And I do understand the point that he's making about, well, it could de-emphasize the quads a bit, so you might not want to do it if you're concerned with quad development. But when we come back over the point, are we ever squatting just for quad development, or are we trying to get big and strong and powerful and explosive? The wider stance is still going to facilitate that. And if you're getting stronger and more explosive and you're still taking them to a deep position to where you are going deep so that you're making sure that you're using the quads correctly out of the bottom, you're still going to get really big quads. And it's still going to give you a foundation for your quads. And at the end of the day, if you're doing it that way, it does carry over to other lifts better. It will carry over to things like your sumo deadlifts better. And if you're doing sumo deadlifts, which are a more quad dominant deadlift, and you're getting stronger at that from doing the wider stance box squats, that's going to feed into your quads. And it's all going to come around, right? You're still going to get big quads. And like with anything else, if you're still not getting big enough quads from doing all these exercises, you can always add supplemental lifts in, right? You can always do step-ups. You can always do weighted lunges, walking lunges, split squats, whatever it is you need to do. I personally like to do weighted step-ups onto a box. you can do other things to go ahead and supplement that. And I do understand and appreciate the point that he made. I don't want it to sound like I don't, because I do appreciate the point he made about the de-emphasizing the quads. But you get so much more out of doing the wider stance box squat. It brings so much more to the table as a better movement, that just because of the risk of a little bit of quad deactivation just really isn't worth it to me. When in worst case scenario, you can always add an extra quad exercise in if it's still a lagging issue. And for most guys out there, let's be realistic. A lot of your Metcon work's going to handle it. Your sled drags, your prowler pushes, your plyometrics, all that other stuff on top of doing all the box squatting, your quads are probably not going to be a lagging muscle if you are actually training like an athlete. Just something to think about. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.